strategy guides have their roots in gaming going all the way back to the 1980s. The most famous example of these would be the guides printed in the Nintendo Power magazines. And this was essential back then because difficult and obscure tasks and puzzles were almost impossible to solve, unless of course there was someone on the playground who had information like a nerdy backstreet dealer. So when strategy guides came out for each game, it was an absolute godsend. Suddenly, RPG games were easier to understand, character abilities and special moves were all there, and all maps were at your fingertips. Sadly though, in the mid-2000s, strategy guides weren't in quite as much demand, and this was due to the rise of websites such as IGN, GameFAQs, and even YouTube offering free and easy tips and answers for you in literal seconds. And it would be those very sites that would lead to the slow and eventual death of the strategy guide, with both Brady and Prima, who were the same company in the end, ceasing production in 2019. This isn't the end of the strategy guide though, because these days they tend to be more elaborate collector's pieces. I love them though. I love that they expand on the lore of the game, whilst offering all the tips and hints you need. Yes, it's easier to just Google what you need, but for me, it's the same argument as physical versus digital games, and I am firmly in the camp of a good strategy guide. So let's take a look at some that I have. And I'll begin with some of my favourite titles, with them being the Fallout and Elder Scrolls series. I absolutely love the Oblivion Guide, which is full of fantastic artwork and lore. Being a fantasy open world RPG, you can see by how beefy it is, with this iteration being the Game of the Year edition, which adds content from the game expansions. The Fallout guides are similar of course, but they offer cool bonus maps, which have every location printed on. Next up then is some from the late 90s for some obscure RPG games on the PC, and a guilty pleasure of mine, that being the Might and Magic series. Now these really are a godsend, because with these titles there is very little hand-holding, and you learn by your mistakes. So it's nice to be given a little bit of direction, as you can easily get lost with there being no quest markers. One other issue is that the game maps are so difficult to find your way, because they put floors and dungeon levels on top of each other, making the mini-map almost redundant. Again, there's some nice artwork in these guides, but all three are sadly printed in black and white. Still, these are on the rarer side and command a decent amount of money to buy. Now, it's no secret that Baldur's Gate is my favourite game. Just look at the channel's logo, for example. But I do really enjoy the Dungeons & Dragons isometric RPG games as a whole. These guides are very comprehensive, and list weapons, armour and spells, and explain all their stats and effects, along with the duration of powers and area effects. I want to just highlight the Baldur's Gate 1 guide, however, because it is actually unconventional, because it's written in the style of a diary. Yeah, it's bloody horrible, because if you want a tip or a clue, you have to read through the ramblings of a generically boring character. Looking at the Baldur's Gate 2 guide, however, shows that they realised their mistakes with the first guide, and released a wonderful guide jam-packed full of detail, backstory, and all the info and stats you need. And it's all presented on colourful glossy paper. Two more RPG guides that I have are for Diablo 2 and Arcanum of Steamworks and Magic Obscura. Now most of you watching will be familiar with Diablo 2, and in fact I think I have the remaster on the Nintendo Switch, so this guide will get used. As far as content goes though, the Diablo guide offers information on items, spells and detail maps. Sadly though, it's all in black and white. Arcanum, on the other hand, is an isometric RPG, very much in the same style of Baldur's Gate and Icewind Dale. But Arcanum is set in a steampunk world, which fuses both technology and magic. It's sadly a niche game that deserves a lot more love than it actually receives, because it's a cool concept. The guide is pretty much the same as the D&D guides, but offers a lot more in the way of a walkthrough. I also forgot to mention that most of the guides contain a bestiary, offering backstories on enemies, special abilities they have, their moves, resistances and weaknesses, which can be priceless information. Then we come to the collector's editions, which were typically hardbacked and offered way more quality and was more in-depth. These were obviously aimed at collectors and were a great answer to the threat of online guards that were becoming the go-to for many a frustrated and stuck gamer. First off then, I have some Final Fantasy guards that are absolutely beautiful. They of course offer all the usual stats for characters, items and boss battles, but they also really delve deep into the story and lore of the game. These collector's guards also offer things like maps, art prints, and even digital PDF files of the guard, which is a really nice touch. The GTA 5 guard is a fantastic example of this, with it coming with a fantastic print of the three main characters, and even adding some nice full-page character art in the guides. Finally then is the biggest part of my collection, and that is my Pokemon guards. Now these span over many years and over so many games, and it is shown by how simplistic the first ones were, right through to the modern games that have hundreds of Pokemon, items and tips for online play. But let's look at the first guard for Pokemon Red and Blue, which was released in the 90s, back when the game was on the Game Boy, and contained 150 Pokemon. But yeah, the guard is very 90s, with funky patterns on each page, and it also uses the old artwork for each Pokemon, which is a really nice trip down nostalgia lane. I also have an unofficial Pokemon Yellow guard, which I got free with a copy of Nintendo World, back in the 90s again I think. And whilst it's clearly a watered down version of the official guard, it's still really helpful. Now let's contrast that with the modern game guards, because with the newer Pokemon games, they started to release two guards, as you can see here. One is the standard guide, and the other is a Pokédex. The guide offers everything that you would expect, such as maps and stats, but the Pokédex guide goes into real detail of each specific Pokemon, and details moves, resistances, well, literally every bit of information that every Pokemon master would need. And that is a look at some of my gaming guides. I do have more which I can showcase in a future video, but for now, I hope that my passion for gaming guides has shone through. And of course, I hope you've enjoyed this video. So thanks for watching, and take care.